My guest today is an award-winning journalist and presenter who has worked in the media for nearly 20 years. Alexis anchored the ITV Evening News in the Westcountry for 7 years before becoming a campaigning chief executive of the National Network for Surviving Stalking. Awarded her OBE in the 2022 birthday honours for services to the safety and equality of women, she launched the Westcountry Women Awards in the same year. Let me introduce Alexis Bowater OBE. Hey, welcome, Alexis.
Thank you very much. That's a very lovely introduction, I have to say.
Oh, well, it's wonderful to have you with us. We're here for our Devon Women in Business audience and anybody else who would like to join us.
Yeah.
And
Hello,
we're
everyone.
really forward to and we're really looking forward to hearing your insights and experiences. I've got a few questions that I've put together, hoping to learn from your incredible story. The first question I have is, can you share what inspired you to pursue your career path and what keeps you motivated every day?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can. So, I'm really lucky, I think, in lots of ways, because I knew from when I was very young that I wanted to be a journalist. And I knew when I was very little, actually. So there's a really cool story from when I was about 8 years old, and I was at a primary school on Dartmoor in a place called Chagford, and I was in the class of a lady I remember really well. She was really lovely. She was called Lorna Young, and Lorna had set us all a task of going and painting that afternoon on trestle tables in the back of her classroom. And she found me underneath one of the trestle tables, not painting. And I was actually writing in a notebook. And instead of telling me off, she hauled me out from underneath the table and said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm writing. And I want to be a writer. I want to be a journalist." And she said, "Well," she said, "if you're going to do that, you need to learn how to spell properly." And it was just a really cool moment, because she was a great teacher and she recognized that I was with great determination doing something that I wanted to do. And instead of telling me off for not painting, she gave me guidance and support. And that was, that was a brilliant, pivotal moment in my life. And it was the mark of a very, very brilliant teacher, to be able to handle that situation so well. So yeah, so even very small, she gave me help and advice and support. And that's really what I've benefited from all of my life ever since, I think.
Isn't it fantastic? That's all we need, really, isn't it? Is that encouragement and support, and somebody who says, actually, you want to do this, that's great, but you probably need the tools to do it as well. Learning to spell would be useful if you're going to go into a career in writing.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So what challenges have you faced as a woman in your field, which I guess was pretty male dominated at the time when you started? And how have you overcome those challenges?
So I think there are lots of pictures in my head, I think, of pivotal moments, but there is one which really stood out for me, which I've actually relayed to lots of younger women, and I've given speeches at schools about this, which was that when I was 15 and I was speaking to my careers master at school, he asked me what I wanted to be, and I said I wanted to be a journalist. And he said, "What do you mean? Do you want to go and write articles for women's magazines on cookery and knitting?" And I said, no, I don't want to do that. I want to work in a newspaper newsroom. And he said, "Well, you can't do that. It's a boy's job." And for the younger generation, younger than us, Louise, when they hear that, they're really shocked, and quite rightly so, because you can hardly imagine that happening within living memory, but it did, and it happened for me in those very pivotal teenage years. And so for me, what did that mean? That meant that I didn't get the help and advice and support that I needed at that time. And it meant that I felt that I needed to prove that I was as bright as the boys, or brighter than the boys, in order to embark upon this career. So I think in lots of ways, that's probably why I waited until after I'd done a master's degree to go down the route of trying to become a journalist. So what it meant was that my journalist career started in my early 20s. Probably could have started earlier than that, but it didn't. But it did mean that I was pretty determined by the time I started to go down that route. And I ended up getting a traineeship, an indentureship with Northcliffe newspapers, which was, of course, the absolute sort of gold standard of training in journalism, and ended up working by the time I was 24 in a newspaper newsroom.
It's so inspiring, isn't it? And I can imagine that young people listening to this today would think, crikey, really? But have times changed so much? And yeah, of course they have. And that's a really hopeful state of affairs, isn't it? That in our lifetime, things have moved on. Of course, we also know that in some ways, they still have a way to go.
Yeah.
You know, we're still moving times on now, aren't we?
Yeah.
On that subject, we would love, I'm sure I speak for all of our viewers here, we would love to hear more about your role as an advocate for women's rights, for equality, the work you do campaigning against violence towards women and girls. What initiatives and projects are you currently super passionate about?
So the ones I'm doing at the moment are, well, I run the Westcountry Women Awards, where we give women a platform to talk about what they're doing. We celebrate and elevate women all across the West Country. So yes, so I was listening to what you're saying about. I think what I'm doing now comes as no surprise to me when I look back along the road that I've come along. And it's part of that whole philosophy, that learning, that sometimes you don't really realize that you've been on the same path until you look back along it.
Yeah.
So the gender aspect of what I do has been embedded in my life for at least 3 decades. So that master's degree that I did was actually in international politics, economics, and social policy, specializing in gender and development. So my academic background my passion for supporting women and women's rights globally hasn't come out of nowhere. It was part of my first degree. It was part of my master's degree. And it's been embedded really in everything that I do since then, looking at the world through the lens of women's rights and equality. So I, as a journalist for 15 years, I was there to tell people's stories. It was my responsibility to give a voice to people who didn't have a voice, and do so with passion and responsibility and gravity. And when I left ITV to become, and I became a campaigning chief executive, I became a campaigner for women's rights all over again. And that was because of personal experience that I had with the criminal justice system, being stalked, and for somebody ending up in prison for a very long time for that stalking that was carried out against me and at the time my unborn children. So those were successful years of campaigning and raising awareness about equality and combating violence against women and girls. But since then, I've been involved in Women in Business networking and women's awards across the 4 counties of our peninsula. And I've recognised the importance of having these conversations, because when I left a newsroom, I think I felt that the level playing field was there for us, for 51% of the population, that most of those battles had been won, but it's not true. And once I was outside of a newsroom, I realised that the field is far from level. It's more like the Himalayas, really. And there are plenty more fights to be had and plenty more battles to be won. So I think, you and I come from the same place in talking about equality and equity, which is a very different thing. And that's why I think I'm in this position of running the Westcountry Women Awards, raising awareness about these issues, campaigning for change, and offering, what we're offering training for women now who want to overcome, who want to build their confidence, overcome imposter syndrome, be better at public speaking. And I think a lot of that ingrained fear does come from a lack of equality and a fear that violence will be used against you at some point.
Yeah, it's quite bleak when we really stop and think about it, and I think that's half of the problem, isn't it? It's too bleak to think about sometimes, so we don't, and yet we need to hear the messages. We need to keep having the conversations, the difficult conversations, and somehow, certainly in Devon Women in Business, the bringing together and the networking opportunities and the, people say it's networking that doesn't feel like networking because it feels like you've got together with a bunch of your chums who also happen to be in business or professional women, and you can have conversations, proper conversations, without it feeling too formal or too heavy or any of that. And when we talk about supporting, celebrating, elevating women across the region, that's by doing that and by having fun and by bringing everyone together and having a good time, that's how we create that trust to be able to have those conversations. And I think I've heard you say before, together we all can achieve so much more. The network is greater than the sum of its parts.
I really believe that. I think it's, the power of the collective is that the whole is much greater than the sum of its parts. And I also think that there's so much truth in the in women talking to women. We speak a different language to each other because we have a different life experience. We come from different places. We can speak to each other in a certain shorthand. And I remember seeing an interview, I think it was with Meryl Streep, where she was talking about how women in our lives, we have to learn the language of men and we have to speak the language of men, but men don't learn the language of women. And I think that there's a great relief when women are talking to women because we speak a different language to each other. We have a shared experience that men don't have. And unfortunately, I think that shared experience in lots of ways boils down to the statistics on combating violence against women and girls, that is there and is always in the background for women, and is lurking. I remember running one of my events in Plymouth, and a journalist came along, and the place was absolutely packed. It was packed. And he said, why is it that they're all here? Why are these women all here? And I said, well,
he asked that.
Yeah, he asked that.
He asked that, yeah.
He asked that.
If the journalist were the woman, she wouldn't have needed to ask that because she
I don't
speaks
think
women.
she would. No, it was really interesting. And so I said to him, well, you know, look at this room. Look at this room of more than 100 women. I said, and then just apply the statistics. So the statistics will tell you that 1 in 5 women will be stalked at some point in their lives. 1 in 4 women will be seriously sexually assaulted or raped. 1 in 4 women will be subjected to some form of domestic violence or abuse. 97% of women will be sexually harassed at some point in their lifetime, and 2 women a week are being murdered by their partners or ex-partners. I said, so look at this room. I said, this is a room full of women who have been, are, or are waiting to be in very serious trouble simply because they are women. I said, and they are voting with their feet and coming here. Why do you think they're coming to a safe place to do business?
Yeah. And then we hope the light switch went on in his head. Then we hope.
I think it illustrated for me in so many ways the importance of us having these conversations, of us doing what we do and having these networks and making these spaces to talk about this stuff, because it's about life experiences. And I think for a lot of men, it just doesn't overlap for them. It never even occurs to them that personal safety is something that women have to think about every day on an innumerable times a day. And it's not something that they have to.
Mm. When we were talking recently, I asked you about a pivotal moment in your life that kind of changed things for you.
Yeah.
And I think of it as your enough moment. Can you share that with us?
Yeah. I think, you know, growing up and, you know, going through your teenage years and being a woman and having, you know, lots of unwanted attention, meant that certainly for me, and maybe for lots of other people, a lot of the sort of small assaults were incremental and creeping and accumulative, but I certainly normalized, I think, a lot of that, because it happened so much, and it happened so much. But there came a point for me when, you know, I accepted that I'd been stalked a lot, and that lots of things had happened to me simply because I was a woman. That once I had gone through what was almost a court case of a stalker, a man who I'd never met, I didn't want to meet, I'd never been in a relationship with, I never wanted to be in a relationship with, who'd been controlling my life and who'd almost controlled me into a court space to face him across the court. Once he was jailed and that was supposedly over, there was a very pivotal moment for me where either I could have just pushed that over my shoulder again and thought, all right, that's yet another one, or I could have done what I did, which was have listened to what people were asking me to do, listen to the people who were asking me to put my voice to this genre. And I remember the penny dropping for me with a really large clang that I'd had enough of all this. I'd had enough. I'd had enough of being, you know, being abused or assaulted or controlled or being on the wrong end of the criminal justice system or being in the criminal justice system, or people committing crimes against me because I was a woman. I'd had enough. I'd just had enough.
And you thought, and I guess we've all maybe thought, somebody's dealing with this.
Yeah.
Someone surely
Yeah.
at this point in our human history, someone is getting a handle on this.
Yeah.
And then you realize that
nobody
perhaps
is.
perhaps they weren't doing it
No.
enough or whatever, and you felt that it was your calling.
I think particularly for stalking, for me, it was so obviously life-altering, irreversibly damaging crime that I think I hadn't really realized affected quite so many people until I turned a journalistic eye on it to do an article for the Sunday Times, and I started looking into the statistics and interviewing experts, and it was massive. 1 in 5 women and 1 in 10 men will be stalked, and this is a crime that is variously called, psychological rape or psychological terrorism, or some people call it murder in slow motion because it leads on to other crimes. And nobody seemed to be taking it seriously. And that's what I think I found so shocking, that nobody seemed to be taking it seriously. And there were senior police officers I spoke to who said it, the way you're treated as a stalking victim in this country is not so much a postcode lottery as postcode potluck. And I found that completely unacceptable, and felt that I was in a position to do something about it, to instigate those conversations, to have those conversations, to reflect on those conversations, to promote those conversations that needed to be had in order to raise awareness about this hidden and secret crime that was affecting so many people across the United Kingdom and beyond.
And there is now legislation in place. If anybody is watching this and is experiencing that horror, there is more redress now than there was when you first experienced it.
Yes, there certainly is. And there are certainly more tools that the police can use. And stalkers should be very scared compared to how they might have been and thought that they could behave without any kind of punishment maybe 15 years ago. It's not the case now. But but also I think that I think that people understand the true nature of this crime now, whereas certainly 15 years ago people were still joking about it. They were making jokes about it.
Yes. I mean, I remember it being a kind of a story for the slightly rubbishier red tops. It was that kind of thing, this celebrity's being stalked or that one. And it was almost presented as entertainment.
Yes,
back in the day.
I think it was, you're right. And you put your finger on it. It was well, what does she expect doing the job that she does? Which is not helpful at all.
And we have moved on from that.
Yeah, very glad.
Thankfully.
So yes, so coming back to what you're saying, so pivotal moment, there was an enough moment, where in my head I just thought, enough, I've had enough of this. This is enough. And it was that sort of, I suppose, colloquially, or it's the moment you get your big finger out and you just go, that's enough now. That's enough.
Pushed me too far.
Enough.
You didn't know where the line was, maybe. I didn't know where the line was, but we've just gone right over it.
Yep.
And that's enough.
Now.
Yes. Okay, so this is good stuff, and I'm hoping that our watchers, viewers, and listeners are getting the goosebumps that I am just listening to you and really having it land that this is serious stuff. Although when we all get together, we have a really good time, we are doing really important work as we get together and have a good time. And that is because we are a group of women. We are, we have this bond and we have this understanding. Devon Women in Business award winners receive a golden ticket. We devised, didn't we? You and I, over a cup of coffee, we devised this golden ticket, golden buzzer idea that the winners of the Devon Women in Business Awards get put through automatically, without them even having to think about it very much, into the semi-finals of the Westcountry Women Awards every year.
Yeah.
So we've been really excited about that. I have, and my business partner at Devon Women in Business, Maureen, we're both super excited that our winners who actually don't wait to be nominated, they enter themselves for the Devon Women in Business Awards. They enter themselves. And that takes a lot of courage.
Yeah.
They have to put on their big girl pants quite often to be able to make that entry. Maybe they wouldn't have entered the Westcountry Women Awards of their own accord, but they get to do it anyway because we just give them that leg up. It's what you talked about earlier about elevating women. And we look for other women around the county of Devon who are entering the Torbay Awards or the Hospitality Awards or the Food and Drink Awards or whatever it might be, or the North Devon Awards. And we get in touch with those organisers and we say, please send us your female winners from your awards, and we will enter them in the Devon Women in Business Awards so that they can automatically, almost without thinking, get to compete on that larger platform. So we've created this staircase of confidence, haven't we? And
ladder of success.
Ladder of success. We've got all kind. We need to brand it, really. Perhaps we should trademark it. I'm not sure.
I prefer yours. I think I like that. That's the staircase of confidence. I really like that.
We just feel like we have to climb the stairs, don't we? And every step is. The step seems to get bigger, doesn't it, than the one before, and it takes a bit more effort and a bit more conviction and a bit more oomph. So if somebody just gives you a leg up, it's quite nice.
It is quite
nice. And again, that's women, isn't it? Giving each other a leg up, holding hands, come on, let's go.
Yeah.
That's what we're all about, supporting and celebrating.
And I really, really like that, and that relationship building that we've done, because it moves into that area that we've discussed before of the collegiate, and having these loose teams. They don't have to be formal teams, these sort of loose teams that are all singing from the same hymn sheet and pointing in the same direction. They don't have to be singing well, and they don't have to be singing in tune. That doesn't matter, as long as it's the same song. Because I think you've highlighted it, and it kind of comes back to the reason why we piloted this training last year, is that I think that lots and lots of women suffer from imposter syndrome, and they are really nervous about this stuff. They're really worried about it.
Even the super talented, super successful, trailblazing, fabulous women that win our awards.
Yes, without a doubt.
Still on the inside, they're going, oh God, don't ask me to speak.
Yes, yeah. And this, do you know, this was what I noticed over the last few years, in actual fact, over the last 10 years, but particularly for some reason over the last couple of years. So we would have, thousands of nominations. They would come through the system. I'd meet them. I'd think they're amazing. I'd meet them at the semi-finalist announcement or the finalist announcement. You would have the same situation. And then you'd ask them to speak, even if it was at the semi-finalist announcement or the finalist announcement, and they'd go, oh, no, that's not for me. And then even then, when the winner was standing on stage, she'd be saying, oh, I'm really struggling with this. I'm really struggling with public speaking, or I'm really struggling with imposter syndrome. And I'd be thinking, this is a problem, isn't it? This is a problem. This is the gap we need to fill, because if you've got such a significant percentage of women suffering from imposter syndrome or feeling that they can't speak in public, then that is hampering their levels of success. It's hampering them, and it's hampering their opportunity to show people why they are those winners or why they're even those nominees. So so we started these empowerment days last year. We piloted a couple. We did one in Cornwall and we did one in Exeter, and they were absolutely transformational. They were transformational. You know, women who came along at 9 o'clock in the morning and wouldn't say boo to a goose, were going away at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, ready to take on anyone and talk to anyone about anything.
Fabulous.
It was
And you're doing them again this year. Aren't you? You're doing them again this year.
Yeah.
And
so on the evidence of that, because we'd obviously done something right, we decided to do, so we're doing 2 in Cornwall this year and 2 in Devon this year. So 2 of these training days. So yeah, hopefully, you know, we'll see some Devon women in business there as well as anybody else who wants to come along. They're really good, fun days. There's nothing scary about them. I don't come along and go, oh. I come along with Claire Palmer, and she's really brilliant. And we just try and make people feel not just better about themselves, but clearer about themselves, with a better understanding of why they're standing on their own shoes.
It's so important, and we will have details of those empowerment days on the Devon Women in Business calendar.
Brilliant.
Along with, we have International Women's Day coming up. So that event that you're running in Plymouth at the Crown Plaza on the 7th is, well, tickets are already available for that. I know because I bought mine this morning.
I know, we've nailed down the speakers now as well. So we've got some great themes coming up.
Fantastic. Can we break that news on this video?
Go for it. You tell me what you remember of me tipping you off, and I will tick it off here because I've actually got, no, look at that.
Well, there's only one slot that I remember, Alexis, if I'm completely honest with you, isn't there? Because it's the one in the afternoon.
Yes, which is, what do you remember about it?
Brains.
Brains. Boobs.
Boobs.
Yes.
And sex in the afternoon.
And sex in the afternoon. Who doesn't like a bit of sex in the afternoon? That's what I
tell you what, if there is one ticket left over for that event, I will be amazed. Amazed.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
we have that.
Yeah. So we have got that. We've definitely, it's otherwise known as the health hour. But between you and I, it's brains, boobs, and sex.
No, I'm daring you right here, right now, to put that on the program. Exactly like that.
Yeah, I will do that. We have other people speaking as well. We have other lovely things about making a difference, and if you can see it, you can be it, and the explosive power of networking, and how to stop talking rubbish to yourself. Am I allowed to say yes? Yeah, we got Claire Palmer, the bullshit terminator there.
Yeah. I knew that was what she doesn't call it rubbish, does she?
No. Well, as
Claire tells it how it is.
Yeah, she calls it other things.
Stop talking.
Yes, I think you're probably right about the health hour in the afternoon being the one that people are going to be most. They're going to be great for that.
It's going to be
that
great.
Alone, and the lunch and the networking and
So.
Yes.
I have one more question for you, and then I know time is tight, and I really appreciate your time here today. So I will let you go then. Let me just ask you, what are you most excited about when you think of women in business and the future?
What, you and I, or us collectively?
Collectively. All of us, women in business.
So this is, okay, I'm going to tell you this now. I'm not sure I've told you this before. What I'm most excited about is this pipeline that we've created. Yeah. Not that this is just because we haven't together, and this collegiate work that we've done has tumbled over into other people who all want to get involved as well. So we've kind of set an example and everyone's jumping into the pot. We're, you and I, we're in some crazy boat and they're just jumping in and helping us to row it faster. And, anyone can do that. Jump in our boat, help us to row it faster. And what does that mean? It means that we are heading in one direction alone. And that is to celebrate and elevate women all across the West Country, in Devon and all across the West Country. But we're not just doing it with an awards. We're doing it with 10 months of training. We're doing it with 10 months of networking. We're doing it with 10 months of events. And all of these are useful things to get you from here, not necessarily to there, but from the moment you become part of our gang, hopefully you will get something out of it. And it's without competition, it's without agenda. We just want to create a bigger team that works better.
I'm really excited about that too. And I'm thinking as well that there might be, at some point, there might be people watching this who aren't in Devon or the West Country. They might be outside. Yeah. Come down here, it's lovely. But also, no, they just might get a little bit inspired. If this kind of stuff isn't going on where you live now, if you're in, I don't know, somewhere else in the United Kingdom, somewhere else in Europe, somewhere else in the world, if this kind of thing isn't happening, you can start it. You can get inspired by what Devon Women in Business and the Westcountry Women Awards are doing, and you can start it where you are, or join, find it, look for it, create it, make it better, make it bigger. Because I'm really excited. I think women working together is a force for good in the world, let alone in our county.
Yeah, I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. And I think it's really exciting.
Too. Thank you so much for joining us, Alexis, and sharing your experiences. We're so grateful for your time and your insights. To find out more about the West Country Women Awards, you can visit westcountrywomen.co.uk. To find out more about Devon Women in Business, you can visit devonwomeninbusiness.com. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Louise Jenner from Devon Women in Business. That was Alexis Bowater OBE. We hope to see you at one of our networking events very soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye. 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 Bye.